In this lesson, we'll be talking about the coordinate rules for rotations. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to rotate a figure quarter and half turns and rotate a figure without drawing it. So to rotate a figure, it can go clockwise or counterclockwise. A 90-degree turn is a quarter turn, doesn't matter which direction, and a 180-degree is a half turn, and it also doesn't matter which direction. So to rotate it without drawing, a 90-degree rotation, if it's going to go clockwise, first you're going to multiply the x by -1 and then rotate the x and y. So just switch their places. So y comes first, then x. If it's counterclockwise, you're going to multiply y by -1 and do the same thing. Rotate the x and y. If it's a 180-degree rotation, you leave them, but you still multiply x and y by -1. So the rule kind of looks like this. The clockwise, see how the x is multiplied by -1 and the y is first. Counterclockwise, the y is multiplied by -1 and the y is first. In 180 degree, they stay the same place, but they're both multiplied by -1. So for example, if we have this triangle XYZ and it's rotated 90 degrees counterclockwise, counterclockwise means that we multiply y by -1 and then switch them, rotate them. So it would look like that. So the 1, 5 for point X would be now -5, 1. Point Y instead of 5, 2 would be -2, 5. And point Z instead of -1, 2 would be -2, -1. So some examples. We're identifying this rotation. You should see that the C is pointing up here at 12 o'clock. And now it's down here at 6 o'clock. So it's a rotation. It could be either direction. It could go clockwise or counterclockwise, and it's going to end up in the same place because it's a 180-degree rotation. Remember, with the 180-degree rotation, we leave x and y where they are, but we multiply both of them by -1. In the table, complete the original coordinates and coordinates after the rotation and write the rule. So over here, A, B, and C, these are our original ones because they don't have the prime symbol. So A is 1, 1, B is 1, 5, and C is 4, 5. So after the rotation, see how B and C are pointing at 12 o'clock, and over here, they're at 9 o'clock. That means it went backward, so counterclockwise, 90 degrees. So counterclockwise, 90 degrees means that we multiply y by -1 and then we rotate or switch the x and y. So here we multiply y by -1 and then we switch them. Here we're going to multiply 5 by -1, which makes it -5, and rotate them. This one we're going to multiply -5 by -1 to get -5 and rotate them. So say 90-degree counterclockwise. So the y is multiplied by -1, and we rotated or switched the x and y. So let's look at some examples here. So we have this ordered pair, 3, -6, and now it's -6, -3. You can see that the x was positive, now it's negative, and so it's clockwise. In this one, we got 3, -6, and then positive 6, 3. So it's the 6 that was multiplied by -1, which means it's a counterclockwise. In this one, we've got 2, 3, and then we go 3, -2. That means it's the x that was multiplied by -1 before we switched them, so it's clockwise. In this one, we have 5, -7, and then it goes to 7, 5. So it's the 7 that was negative, now it's positive. So -1 times -7 is positive 7. So it's the y that was multiplied. So it's a 90-degree counterclockwise. In this one, we go from 5, -1 to -1, -5. So it's the first number, the 5, that was multiplied by -1. In this one, we go 2, 8. Now we're at -8, 2. So it was the y that was multiplied by -1. So it's counterclockwise. This one, 4, 9, goes to 9, -4. So it was the first one, the x that was multiplied by -1 before we rotated the numbers, so it's clockwise. In this one, we go from 4, 9 to negative 9, 4. It was the 9 that's multiplied by negative 1, and that's the y, so it's counterclockwise. So if we're changing this and going to 90 degrees clockwise, that means we multiply the x by negative 1 and rotate them. So multiply 3 by negative 1 and rotate them. 7, negative 3. Rotate the 2 by, or multiply the 2 by negative 1 before we rotate, and it's negative 1 to negative 2. Multiply the negative 9 by negative 1, that gets us positive 9, and negative 5 times negative 1 gets us positive 5. Now the counterclockwise, remember we multiply the y by negative 1 before we rotate them, so that means the negative 7 is going to be times negative 1, so it's negative 7, 3. The second one means it's going to be the negative 1 that's multiplied by negative 1, which gets positive 1. In the third one, we're going to multiply 4 times negative 1, so that's negative 4, negative 9. And in the last one, we're going to multiply this negative 6 by negative 1, and gets us 6, negative 5. So how many degrees is a quarter turn and a half turn? A quarter turn is 90 degrees, a half turn is 180. For a 180 rotation, multiply the x and the y by negative 1.